in God's grace daily. Grace is commonly described as God's unmerited favor towards man. It's his natural gift to us, his children. The first time the word grace was mentioned in the Bible is in Genesis chapter 6, verse 8. In Genesis chapter 6, the Bible spoke about the various sins and evil that was in the world. It was so bad until God regretted that he made human beings. But in verse 8, the Bible said that Noah found grace in the eyes of the Lord. How did Noah find grace? He found grace from being a righteous man. In fact, he was the only righteous man. God honors righteousness so much that he gave Noah and his family grace and favor above everyone else in the world. He provided them with protection. He spared their lives when he decided to destroy the world by flood. But let us keep in mind that God did not have to give Noah and his family grace. In this day and time, we look at our daily operations as normal. We do not stop and think that everything that we are able to do is only because of God's grace. Grace has become so normal to us that sometimes we forget to give God thanks. Thanks for waking us up, being able to breathe, being able to move our bodies, talk, think, taste, smell, have a shelter over our head, have electricity in our homes, have the ability to drive to work, hop in our car without having any car problems, cut on our water without problems, having a successful business, having a job that pays us, having healthy children, having decent and respectful children, having a sound mind. I hope you get where I'm going with this. Everything that we look at as normal is only through God's grace. Nothing that we do or accomplish is just because of us. It's not us. It's all through God's grace. A lot of time, it takes negative things to happen to cause us to realize that we're only living and moving on God's grace. It's so easy for us to stay in the physical aspect of life and develop a me approach. I saved so hard for that house. I made sacrifices to accomplish that home. I had many sleepless nights to get that degree. And yes, that is true. You would have stayed up many nights studying to get that degree and made sacrifices for that house. But it's only God's grace that allowed you to get what you worked so hard for. It was God's grace that allowed you to remember what you studied when you took that exam. It was God's grace that prevented you from having a brain fog. It was God's grace that kept you and your children in good health so that the money that you saved for your down payment can actually be used as a down payment. It was God's grace that connected you with the right bank. It was God's grace that connected you with the right loan officer. It was God's grace that connected you with the right contractor. It was God's grace that stretched your money. Yes, you worked, but God did the rest. He provided his grace, which was needed in every step of the way. We would be so amazed if we knew what God's grace and favor protected us from. Let us remember that everything that we are able to do is only because of God's grace. And let us remember to live a righteous life, a life that would stimulate an abundant level of God's grace and favor on our lives.